Actually, this is a true story that happened in the life of a king and the founder of Saudi Arabia, Abdul Aziz. He was on a trip or annual pilgrimage to Mecca. And as he was traveling, his car got flat, punctured, and then he had to wait upon so that it is repaired. And as he was sitting nearby, a shepherd comes with a camel, and then he stops, asks what has happened, and then the king begins his conversation talking to him. And the shepherd asks this Abdul Aziz, "Did you see the king passing this way just now? Did you see the king passing this way just now?" And the king looked at him and he asked, "Why do you want to know?" And then this shepherd said, "See, I heard that he is on the way to Mecca, and I have a great desire to go there. But unfortunately, I do not have the financial support. If I had to meet this king, I would have asked for some money, and that would have helped me to go to this pilgrimage." The emperor looked at this shepherd and then put his hand into his bag, fished few gold coins and put into the hand of this shepherd. And when shepherd looked at those coins, he was taken aback, he was surprised. And he tells to this king, "Your Majesty, I did not recognize you by your face, but I recognized you by your generosity. Your Majesty, I did not recognize you by your face, I recognized you by your generosity." My dear brothers and sisters, today's readings, the 25th Sunday of the liturgical calendar, invite us to recognize, to know, and to experience this generous king, this majestic, generous king. I'm sure you might have been a little confused when you read this parable. The owner of the vineyard goes to the marketplace at 5 different times, and at the end of the day, all are paid same equal wages. Doesn't it confuse us? What is he trying to communicate? Or why does he do that? Let's say one person comes in the morning at 9 or early morning at 6 o'clock, other one joins at 9 o'clock, other one comes at 12 o'clock, other one comes at 3 o'clock, the final one comes at 5 o'clock, and then 6 o'clock they stop the work. And not only that, he starts giving the wages starting from the last. The one who came at 5 o'clock, he begins to receive. Isn't it confusing? Confusion is good. So only when you are confused, you start asking questions. And only when we ask questions, there will be some solutions. Similarly, St. Paul had some confusion. Today's second reading speaks about that. He had confusion to choose. Which one to choose? Whether to stay on in this world or to meet his master. And I think getting confused is part of our life. But what is Jesus is trying to say? I think he is answering our confusion. And the answer comes from the first reading from the book of Isaiah. If you are confused why this owner is doing, that is our confusion, then the answer very clearly brought out in the first reading. It says, Your ways of thinking are not my ways of thinking. Your ways of doing are not my ways of doing. I have my own ways of doing things. And that is very clear to us from the scripture. You have a number of examples how God behaves or how God acts in a very different way than as human beings we try to think. Very often we try to, give a framework, and we start thinking from the human framework how God has to behave, or how God should respond, how God should answer. But God says, I have my own ways of answering. Possibly during this pandemic, this also would be a question. And I think to some extent, I think we can take strength and solace from today's first reading. You take the example of Abraham. Who expected him at this old age to be chosen? Not only that, to make him as the father of the nations. Who expected Abraham's wife Sarah to be a mother in her old age? Who expected Moses to lead the Egyptians? In fact, he was a murderer. He murdered one of the Egyptians and he wanted to run away. And that is the time God calls him back and says, lead my people. Who is David? A shepherd boy. And even after choosing, he sinned, but God gave him the mission. You take New Testament, what is Peter? He denied him 3 times and still God asked him to lead the church. What is Elizabeth and Zechariah? In their old age, she was able to bear a child. And a number of examples that we have to show that God has His own ways of doing things. And therefore today's parable, gospel passage, I think throws before us 3 challenges. Maybe asks us 3 questions to reflect and also to find answer in those to those 3 questions. What are the questions that come to my mind? First is, who are saved? Who are saved? This parable Jesus is directing towards the Jewish community, Jewish people. The Jewish people believe that they are the ones who are chosen, and the pagans, the tax collectors, are not eligible. But to this parable, Jesus is trying to say, even the person who comes at the 11th hour is equally eligible. That means if a person who is a sinner acknowledges that he is a sinner and wants to come back, nobody can prevent him. And the best example that we have is the thief on the cross. He repented and he said, Lord, have mercy on me. Remember me in your paradise. That is what Jesus is asking us to remember and also reminds us. So it is not the one who is so-called eligible is saved. Rather, every person has equal possibility and the chance and opportunity if he repents. Second one, who is favored? Definitely in the Old Testament, if you have to say, we may get to think that the Jews are favored one. But is it true? They were equally punished. They had to go hardships. Now when you say somebody is very much favored, then I think usually our understanding is that person should not be put in difficulties or troubled, or that person is very much, is taken care without difficulties. But that doesn't happen. God challenges even the one whom He favors. And if at all God favors, I think from today's gospel we know it is the last and the least and the lost. God favors those and not who think that they are the favored ones. And in today's gospel we realize that very much. You see, those people are waiting at the marketplace, and some are waiting from morning till evening. Usually, who would be picked up on the marketplace? Definitely who are strong, able, who are skillful. Now, these people who are there from morning possibly are those who are in a way handicapped, or they are not skillful. In a way, society considered them useless. They are not much of help. Such are the people who are there. And the owner recognizes that the need for these people. He feels that these people are in need because they also need to support their family. They have to take care of their family. And therefore, even though he picks them up at the last hour, he pays them what is minimum required, the day's wage. And therefore, it makes us to reflect, there are no so-called favorites in the eyes of God. For God, all are equal. God treats equally. And finally, who is happy? Who is happy? When those people who came in the morning and they saw the last person getting the same, definitely they might have said, it's unfair. Don't we say that? Very often when somebody is, better placed, or somebody has better opportunities, better talents, though we may not say it loudly, we also tend to feel that it is not fair. Maybe we feel that God has done some injustice to me. God has done something better better to that person and not to me. And therefore it is important to ask, am I satisfied? Am I happy with what I have? Very often we tend to forget the blessings that we have. God has given us so many blessings, we tend to forget, we don't focus on those beautiful blessings that we have. Instead, what we do not have, that is what becomes our focus. And therefore the beautiful hymn that we have, now count your blessings. I think we will sing to remind ourselves that God has a lot of surprises for us. God has a lot of blessings God has bestowed on us. It is only thing is that we need to acknowledge that. Blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God has done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. And it will surprise you what the Lord has done. So let it surprise us today as we start counting those blessings. And let me quote with this small quote that I came across. When you are grateful, say it. When you say it, mean it. And when you mean it, live it. Not leave it, live it. Live it in your everyday life. So when we say God has blessed us, let us be grateful. And when it's not enough just to be grateful, we may feel that, okay, I thank God, all that, but let us feel it, or we mean it when we thank God. And finally, let us try to live that blessing to each other. Amen.